Crown Prince Cygnus was still chuckling as the sound of the humans screaming through their melting starship hulls echoed throughout the Rakari council chambers. His iridescent purple plumage glowed with a haughty sheen as he addressed the gathered council members via hologram. As I was saying before that rude interruption, after centuries spent exploring the stars, making first contact with countless species, not one has proven worthy of joining our esteemed council. The other Rakari nodded in smug agreement, feathered heads bobbing. One councillor activated his holopad, flipping through videos of the primitive races they had subjugated, crudely fashioned spears, grass huts, pathetic legends about magic and superstition. The montage ended with a blue-green planet, clouds swirling above vast oceans and emerald continents, Earth, an unevolved backwater not even worth conquering. As you can see, Cygnus sneered, these humans are little more than naked apes barely removed from their jungles, an evolutionary dead end, soon to be a forgotten footnote in Rakari history. They pose no challenge to our eternal supremacy. Mocking laughter rang through the chamber. Inferior mammals against the might of the Rakari. The very notion was ridiculous. But if they had paid more attention, the council might have noticed the listening devices concealed in their chambers, the microscopic cameras embedded in their robes. The humans heard every dismissive word, and on the bridge of a cloaked human ship, a scarred old warrior turned to his crew with a grave expression. "This cannot stand," he declared. "Humanity will never be safe until we show these arrogant buzzards what we're made of. It's time to bring the fight to Rakus Prime. We fly for their homeworld at dawn." In a dimly lit bunker, 500 feet beneath the Nevada desert, Lieutenant Commander Benjamin Ward allowed himself a tight smile as he watched the intercepted alien transmission. The arrogant, bird-like creatures dismissed humanity as naked apes, while their ships incinerated helpless human crews. Ward's eyes narrowed. They had no idea what was coming for them. He turned to face his hand-picked team of specialists, the best and brightest from America's elite military units and research institutions. Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, MIT engineers, Caltech astrophysicists. They had trained for this day for years. "Listen up," Ward barked, his voice echoing off the reinforced walls. "Those purple turkeys up there think we're primitives. They have no clue we've been watching them, stealing their tech for decades, that we've got ships that can dance circles around theirs. Well, it's time to show our hand." He tapped a button, and a holographic star map bloomed to life, the Rakari homeworld glowing an angry red. "We're going to waltz right up to their front door, pretending to be ignorant savages begging for their wisdom. Trojan horse protocol. Once we're inside their defenses, inside their heads, we'll bleed them dry. Every scrap of data, every technological marvel will be ours." The assembled soldiers and scientists listened intently, faces lit by the hologram's ghostly light. They knew the stakes, the knife's edge between victory and extinction. "Make no mistake," Ward continued grimly. "We pull this off and we'll leap ahead 1,000 years, be able to take our rightful place in the galaxy. But if we fail, if they sniff us out, well, those poor bastards who just died will seem lucky." He fixed them with a steely gaze. "I won't lie to you, even with our primitive disguise, there's a damn good chance the Rakari will peg us for the threat we are. It's a gamble, but the brass thinks it's one worth taking. I do too. So what do you say? Ready to go steal some alien secrets?" A chorus of hoo-ahs rattled the room, grim chuckles quickly fading. They knew many of them would likely not return. The price of freedom was always paid in blood. As they filed out to begin pre-launch checks, Ward clasped forearms with his XO, a mountain of a Marine named Kowalski. "Hell of a thing, isn't it? Fate of the entire human race in our hands." "Ain't that the truth?" Kowalski grunted, cradling his rifle. "Better not screw it up, sir." Ward watched him go, then glanced back to the frozen image of the sneering Rakari prince, so assured of his own superiority. The commander felt a twinge of doubt, a cold sliver of dread. Had he underestimated these aliens? Was he sending his people, his entire species, to their doom? He shook it off with a growl, too late to back out now. Humanity's future would be decided, for good or ill, in the next 24 hours. It was time to start the war. 22 days later, the primitive-looking human ship dropped out of FTL at the outskirts of Rakari space, the bright green swirl of the Rakus Nebula looming in the distance. Ward glanced around the cramped bridge, meeting the eyes of his team. Shoulders were tense, jaws set. This was it, the point of no return. "Broadcast the message," he ordered, voice steady. A young comm officer nodded, clearing his throat, before reciting the carefully crafted words. "Greetings, people of the stars. We are the Terrans, a simple race who have only just begun to explore the wonders of the cosmos. We come in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge from the wise Rakari." Ward suppressed a snort. It was laying it on a bit thick, but Rakari egos would lap it up. He watched the view screen intently, waiting. A few beats of silence, then a sharp chirp as an incoming transmission was detected. The face that resolved on the screen was instantly recognizable. Crown Prince Cygnus, resplendent in his royal purple plumage. His beady eyes narrowed as he looked the humans up and down, taking in their scuffed pressure suits and battered equipment. "Well, well," he drawled, "the naked apes have left their trees. How quaint." Ward stepped forward, head inclined in a show of deference. "Great Prince Cygnus, it is an honor. We have traveled far to meet you, in hopes that your people might share some of your wisdom with us." Cygnus preened at the flattery. "But of course, it is the duty of the superior races to uplift those who cannot help themselves. You have been brought to the attention of the Rakari, and we are not without mercy. Your vessel will be tracted to the homeworld, where we shall educate you." "You are most kind," Ward replied, the picture of wide-eyed gratitude. Behind his back, he flashed a quick series of hand signals to his crew. Showtime. The team braced themselves as a shudder ran through the hull, the Rakari tractor beam locking on. Ward allowed himself a small smile. The Rakari had scanned their ship, of course, but found only what they expected to see: a primitive fusion drive, basic life support, rudimentary shielding. Little did they know that far more sophisticated systems lay dormant under the hood, waiting for the word. As the ship accelerated towards Rakus Prime, Ward mentally reviewed the mission parameters one last time. Make contact, gain access, play the bumbling primitives, and all the while learn everything they could about Rakari technology and society, until the arrogant birds no longer had any secrets left to steal. The blue-green curve of the Rakari homeworld swelled in the view screen, alien ships buzzing around it like angry hornets. Ward felt a twinge of nerves, but pushed it down. This was the moment he had trained for, the chance to change the course of human history. Failure was not an option. The human ship settled onto the landing pad with a hiss of thrusters, the overbuilt landing gear absorbing the impact easily. Ward stood before the main hatch, his team assembled behind him in their most unassuming jumpsuits. He cracked his neck, then nodded to the officer at the controls. "Crack the seal. Let's go make some new friends." The hatch door swung open, and the humans got their first look at the Rakari homeworld. Towering skyscrapers of gleaming metal and synth glass pierced the sky, their elegant curves and fluted spires putting human architecture to shame. Hovering vehicles zipped between the spires in intricate patterns, the air shimmering from their anti-grav emissions. And in the center of it all, a great pyramid of polished obsidian, so black it seemed to swallow the light. The Imperial Palace, the heart of the Rakari Empire. Waiting at the base of the ramp was Crown Prince Cygnus himself, flanked by a dozen guards in ceremonial armor, their plasma rifles held at precise angles across their chests. The prince was even more imposing in person, standing nearly 8 feet tall, his deep purple feathers almost black in the bright sunlight. Ward stepped forward and bowed low, his crew following suit. "Prince Cygnus, we are honored by your welcome." Cygnus inclined his head a fraction of an inch, the barest concession to courtesy. "You are fortunate to receive it, Terran. Not many of the lower races are granted an audience with the Rakari crown, much less a tour of the homeworld." "We are grateful for the opportunity," Ward replied, keeping his tone earnest and slightly breathless. "We have much to learn from your people." Indeed you do, Cygnus said, his eyes glittering with condescension. Come, let me show you the wonders of Rakari science. Perhaps you will even be able to comprehend a fraction of it. He turned with a swirl of his cape and strode towards a waiting hovercar, not bothering to see if the humans would follow. Ward gritted his teeth and fell into step behind the prince, his team fanning out around him. As they walked, Ward covertly activated the scanner built into his wristcom, the device disguised as a simple chronometer. Immediately, it began to pull in reams of data: atmospheric composition, gravitic fluctuations, stray electromagnetic emissions. All of it would be analyzed, sifted for any scrap of usable intel. The hovercar was opulent in the extreme, all brushed metal and supple leather, the Rakari crest emblazoned on every surface. Ward sat gingerly on the edge of his seat, keenly aware of the guards watching his every move, their hands never straying far from their weapons. Cygnus lounged back in his seat like a king on his throne, one taloned foot tapping idly. Tell me, Terran, what do you know of zero-point energy extraction? It was a test, a challenge. Ward pretended to fumble for an answer. I'm afraid I am not familiar with the concept, Great Prince. Our people have only mastered the basics of fusion power. Zero-point energy is beyond our understanding. It was a bare-faced lie. Humanity had been experimenting with zero-point extraction for decades, in secret labs far below the Earth's surface, but Cygnus didn't need to know that. The prince chuckled, a sound like gears grinding. Of course it is. How could I forget the limits of your primitive monkey brains? Perhaps a demonstration is in order. The hovercar glided to a halt before a squat, heavily reinforced structure, guards in powered armor standing rigidly at the entrance. Cygnus led the way inside, the humans trailing behind, Ward's wristcom scanner working furiously. The chamber within was cavernous, dominated by a pulsing sphere of blue-white light suspended in an invisible force field. Cables and conduits snaked away from the sphere, vanishing into the walls and ceiling. "Behold," Cygnus said, his voice echoing in the vault-like space. "The beating heart of Rakari Prime, an artificial star, its power harnessed to fuel our cities, our ships, our empire. This is what separates the Rakari from lesser species like your own." Ward gaped at the sphere, putting on his best slack-jawed yokel impersonation. Inwardly his mind raced. An artificial star. Humanity had theories, mathematical models, but nothing close to a working prototype. If they could get their hands on this technology. He shook himself mentally, one step at a time, for now they needed to play their roles. It's incredible, he breathed, beyond anything we could have imagined. Cygnus smiled thinly. Indeed. And this is only the beginning of what the Rakari have achieved. Come, let me show you our shipyards, our weapons labs. Let you see firsthand the futility of ever challenging our dominion. As they toured the gleaming facilities of the Rakari war machine, Ward's wristcom continued to gather data, assembling a priceless trove of intelligence. But at the same time, a niggling sense of doubt began to grow in his gut. The Rakari ships were impressive, no doubt, all sleek lines and thrumming power bristling with weapons. But looking closer, Ward started to notice small things, discrepancies, inefficient power couplings, overly complex control systems, redundant fail-safes and backup modules, as if the designers didn't quite trust their own work. Watching Cygnus pontificate about the glory of Rakari engineering, it slowly dawned on Ward that perhaps the prince's arrogance was not entirely justified, that perhaps the Rakari were not quite the unstoppable juggernauts they appeared. They were advanced, certainly, centuries ahead of humanity in many respects, but they were not gods, they were not invincible. They had weaknesses, cracks in their armor, and if there was one thing humans were good at, it was finding cracks and wedging them open. As the tour wound to a close, Cygnus turned to Ward with a magnanimous air. "Well, Terran, what do you think of the might of the Rakari? Are you sufficiently awed?" Ward bowed his head, the picture of humility. "We are, Great Prince. The achievements of your people are truly staggering. I can only hope that one day humanity will be found worthy to stand alongside you as allies." He was hamming it up, but Cygnus ate it up, his chest puffing out with pride. "Allies? Let us not get ahead of ourselves. But perhaps in time, if your species proves itself, you may have a place in the Rakari Protectorate, under our guidance, of course." "Of course," Ward murmured. "You are most generous." Cygnus waved a hand lazily. "It is the burden of the superior to uplift the inferior. Consider it a gift." Behind his back, Ward's fingers curled into fists, a gift like scraps tossed to a dog. "We'll see who's the master and who's the pet, you condescending buzzard," he thought coldly. "We'll see who has the last laugh." But outwardly he simply bowed again, even deeper. "The people of Earth are honored to accept your gift, great prince. We place ourselves in your capable hands." Cygnus smiled, slow and satisfied, like a cat toying with a mouse. "Excellent. I will have my ministers draw up the necessary treaties. In the meantime, please enjoy the hospitality of the palace. My servants will show you to your quarters." Ward nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He could feel the rage simmering in his gut, the humiliation of having to kowtow to this preening popinjay, but he swallowed it down, kept his face a mask of grateful subservience. There would be time enough for vengeance later, for now they had a mission to complete. As the humans were led away by a quartet of silent black-uniformed Rakari, Cygnus watched them go, his eyes sharp and calculating. The Terran leader was putting on a good show, but there was something about him, a glint of defiance behind the deference. The prince shook his head. Impossible. The humans were primitives, barely a step above cavemen. They could not possibly pose a threat to the Rakari. And yet... No, he was being foolish, paranoid. The humans would be brought to heel like all the others, their quaint technologies and charming naivete absorbed into the vast tapestry of the Rakari Empire. It was inevitable. Cygnus turned on his heel and strode away, his mind already moving on to other matters. The humans were beneath his notice, a minor curiosity at best. He had no idea of the storm that was gathering on the horizon, the hurricane that would soon engulf his world and shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The Terrans had come to Rackus Prime, and they had not come to serve. They had come to conquer. The first weeks on Rackus Prime passed in a blur of activity. Ward and his team threw themselves into their roles as eager students, soaking up every scrap of information the Rakari deigned to share. They pored over technical schematics, dissected cultural traditions, practiced the harsh guttural language, until their throats were raw. Cygnus proved to be a demanding but effective teacher, his initial disdain slowly giving way to grudging respect as the humans displayed an uncanny aptitude for Rakari science and technology. He began to include them in high-level meetings, seeking their input on engineering challenges and strategic decisions. "You continue to surprise me, Terran," he remarked one day, as he and Ward surveyed a sprawling weapons factory. "Your species has advanced more in a few short months than most do in generations under our guidance." Ward inclined his head, hiding a satisfied smile. "We are driven by a thirst for knowledge, Great Prince, a desire to prove ourselves worthy of your trust." Trust? The word tasted like ashes on his tongue, because even as Cygnus shared his empire's secrets, Ward was harboring secrets of his own. Secrets gleaned from clandestine data raids and overheard whispers, pieced together into a terrible, impossible truth. The source of the Rakari's power, the key to their dominion over 100 worlds. They called them the Quilnir, an ancient race wise and powerful, with minds that could shape reality itself. Once they had been the guardians of the galaxy, using their gifts to maintain peace and balance. Until the Rakari came. Until they shattered the Quilnir homeworld and enslaved its people, harnessing their psychic might for conquest and control. Now, the Quilnir were little more than tools, their extraordinary abilities yoked to the service of their masters. Legions of them were installed on every Rakari ship and station, woven into a vast psionic network that allowed the avians to exert their will across the stars. Ward had seen them, blank-eyed and hollow, their minds chained and suppressed. The sight haunted his dreams, filled him with a cold, implacable rage. The Rakari's achievements, their vaunted superiority, it was all built on a lie. They were not masters of the galaxy, but parasites, leeching off the brilliance of a species far greater than themselves. In that moment, Ward knew that the mission had changed. Humanity would not align with such monstrous evil. Instead, they would bring this rotting empire crashing down. It took weeks of careful planning, of surreptitious sabotage and painstaking preparation. Each member of the team shouldered a staggering burden, knowing that a single misstep could doom them all. But at last they were ready, and so in the heart of the Imperial Palace, before the assembled might of the Rakari leadership, Ward played his hand. "Prince Cygnus," he said, his voice ringing clear, "I have a confession to make." The prince cocked his head, curiosity warring with unease in his eyes. "Speak, Terran." Ward reached into his uniform and withdrew a small holoprojector. With a flick of his wrist, he activated it, and the terrible truth sprang to life above his palm. Images of the Quilnir huddled in squalid cells, of Rakari overseers prying open their minds with cruel machines, of armadas conquering, subjugating, all under the psychic thrall of broken slaves. "This is the source of your power," Ward said coldly. "Not wisdom, not strength, but the stolen gifts of a people you have brutalized for generations." He looked to Cygnus, saw shock and shame warring in the prince's expression. For a moment, just a moment, he dared to hope. Then Cygnus's face hardened, his eyes flashing with rage. "You dare, you primitive simian filth, you dare to lecture your betters. Guards, seize them!" But Ward was already moving, his finger stabbing down on the projector's hidden second trigger. Throughout the palace, in the heart of every ship and station, human saboteurs sprang into action. Explosions bloomed, fire and shrapnel tearing through delicate Rakari machinery. Psionic dampeners, smuggled in piece by painstaking piece, thrummed to life, their null fields spreading like a cancer. And in cells and pens across the empire, Quilnir eyes snapped open, clarity and fury blazing to life as the chains on their minds crumbled to dust. Cygnus stumbled as the ground heaved beneath him, his guards scattering in panic. Ward lunged, a neural disruptor clutched in his fist. One touch, and the prince collapsed, his nervous system overloaded into insensibility. Around them, the palace descended into chaos. Rakari soldiers clashed with human strike teams, while Quilnir captives burst from their cells, their psychic might turned against their tormentors. An explosion, closer and louder than the rest. Ward's head snapped around, dread coiling in his gut. The self-destruct, the fail-safe, the Rakari would reduce the palace to ash before they let it fall. "Fall back," he roared into his comm, dragging Cygnus' limp form across the heaving floor. "All teams evacuate." Static crackled in his ear, shot through with panicked voices. Confirmation of the abort order, tallies of survivors pulling back to the extraction point. A few terrible silences where there should have been a response. Ward forced the implications from his mind, focused on hauling himself and his prisoner through the smoke and flame. They had to get out, off this cursed rock. The survival of 2 species depended on it. He burst from the palace gates into a scene of utter pandemonium. Rakari ships clashed with their own hijacked vessels in the skies above, disgorging soldiers and frantic evacuees. The spires of the capital city blazed, the glittering architecture now jagged teeth in the glow of the flames. And rising above it all, a great cry, a psychic surge that rolled across the city like a wave. The Quilnir, free at last, taking vengeance for centuries of torment. "Commander!" A shout, a familiar profile waving from the ramp of a battered human dropship. Kowalski, soot-stained but alive, beckoning frantically. Ward staggered up the ramp, dumping Cygnus unceremoniously at his exo's feet. "Report," he gasped, adrenaline and exhaustion warring in his veins. Kowalski's face was grim, his eyes haunted. "We did it, sir. Beachhead established, Rakari command in disarray. Their psionic network is crumbling, the Quilnir are in full revolt, but... He trailed off, grief twisting his features. Ward's heart clenched. Who? He asked softly. Jameson, Carver, Takahashi, they held the line at the armory. Bought us the time we needed. Ward closed his eyes, faces and voices flashing through his memory. Good soldiers, good friends. He dragged in a shuddering breath, forced his eyes open, forced himself to be a commander just a little longer. We'll honor their sacrifice, but right now we have a job to finish. He knelt, wrenched Cygnus's head up by the feathered crest. The prince blinked dazedly, focus slowly returning to his eyes. Your empire is finished, Ward told him coldly. The Quilnir are free, and the galaxy now knows of your crimes. You will face justice for every atrocity, every life stolen and mind shackled. Cygnus flinched, but there was still defiance in the set of his shoulders, the clench of his jaw. You've won nothing, ape. Even if I fall, the Rakari will endure. We will rise again, stronger than before, and your precious earth will burn for this treachery. Ward smiled, a hard, humorless thing. No, you won't, because we're going to dismantle every inch of your power structure, root out every nest and bolt hole, and we won't be doing it alone. He looked to the viewports, to the masses of Quilnir now marching through the streets, their power crackling in the air. The Quilnir want justice, Cygnus, and they have a very, very long memory. Cygnus paled, the fight draining from his frame as the magnitude of his defeat crashed down upon him. Ward straightened, turning to Kowalski. Get us out of here. We have a long road ahead of us and a lot of work to do. The dropship lifted off, angling up through the smoke and fire, the ruins of the Rakari's hubris. Ward stood at the viewport, watching the city recede, feeling the weight of the future pressing down on his shoulders. They had struck a blow for freedom today, begun the work of dismantling a tyrant's legacy. But this was only the beginning. Earth would need to step carefully in the days to come, navigating the upheaval of a galaxy suddenly without a ruling power. There would be chaos, conflict, as 100 client species struggled to find their way. But there would also be opportunity, to forge new alliances, to spread the ideals of liberty and cooperation, to build a better future, free of the Rakari's shadow. It was a daunting prospect, but as Ward looked out at the stars, he felt a flicker of hope amid the grief and exhaustion. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger universe, and though the path ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. They would not walk it alone. The human ship shuddered as another volley of plasma fire slammed into its shields. Sparks erupted from overloaded consoles, the acrid stench of burning circuitry filling the air. On the cracked viewscreen, a swarm of Rakari warships loomed, their angular silhouettes bristling with weapons, and at their center the battered but still formidable flagship of Prince Cygnus. "Shields down to 15%!" Kowalski shouted over the din of straining engines and shattering bulkheads. "We can't take much more of this." Ward gripped the arms of his command chair, his knuckles white. He stared at the screen, at the hate-filled face of Cygnus as the prince gloated over the comm. "Did you really think you could defy the might of the Rakari, human, that your pitiful deception would go unanswered?" Cygnus's eyes blazed with fury and madness. "I will take great pleasure in burning your world to ash." Ward's jaw tightened. He knew Cygnus was right. The human ship was no match for the Rakari fleet. They had already lost a third of their crew, the rest injured and exhausted. There was no way they could fight their way out. But maybe they didn't have to. Ward turned to Kowalski, his voice low and urgent. "Prep the escape pods. Get everyone off the ship." Kowalski blinked. "Sir?" "You heard me. Abandon ship. That's an order." "But what about you?" Ward smiled grimly. "I'll stay behind. Give you time to get away." Kowalski opened his mouth to protest, but the look in Ward's eyes stopped him. He nodded tightly. "Aye, sir." As Kowalski relayed the order, Ward turned back to the screen. "Cygnus," he barked, "this ends now." The prince sneered. Your surrender, then? Finally ready to grovel before your betters? Not quite. Ward's hand hovered over the console. See, while you were busy gloating, I've been rerouting power to our antimatter reactors. In about 2 minutes, this ship is going to explode with the force of a small supernova. Cygnus' eyes widened. You wouldn't, you'll die. Maybe, but I'll take you and your fleet with me. Ward's voice was cold. A small price to pay to rid the galaxy of your evil. Behind him, the last of the escape pods jettisoned, streaking away towards the distant safety of Earth. Ward allowed himself a small sigh of relief. His crew, at least, would survive. Cygnus snarled, his composure cracking. You think this changes anything, human? You think your sacrifice will save your pathetic species? He jabbed a talon at the screen. We are infinite. We are eternal. The Rakari will endure, and we will hunt down every last one of you filthy apes and exterminate you. Ward just smiled. You can try. His finger stabbed down on the console. Burn in hell, you son of a bitch. The human ship exploded, a blinding flash of light and radiation that engulfed the Rakari fleet. Cygnus howled in rage and terror as his flagship disintegrated around him, the once mighty vessel reduced to molten slag. But even as the fires consumed him, the prince clung to his hatred, his unshakable belief in Rakari supremacy. With his last breath, he cursed the humans, cursed their defiance and their insolence. And then he was gone, scattered to atoms in the void. In the escape pods, the human crew watched in stunned silence as the firestorm raged. They had known Ward was planning something, but this was beyond anything they had imagined. Kowalski bowed his head, grief and awe warring in his heart. Ward had given his life to save them, to deal a crippling blow to the Rakari. His sacrifice would not be forgotten. As the pod sped towards Earth, the crew clung to each other, to the knowledge that they carried. The Rakari had been weakened, but not destroyed. There would be other battles, other challenges. But for now they had hope, they had a future. And they had a story to tell, a story of the man who had stood alone against an empire and shown the galaxy the true strength of humanity. On the ruined bridge of his ship, Cygnus lay broken and bleeding, his once proud plumage scorched and blackened. He stared at the fading glow of the human escape pods, his vision dimming. With trembling fingers, he activated his comm unit, broadcasting on all Rakari frequencies. "Beware the humans," he rasped, his voice a thready whisper. "We laughed at them, but they have brought us to our knees. They are not to be underestimated." He let his hand fall, the comm unit clattering to the deck. A last shuddering breath escaped his beak, and then he was still, his eyes fixed on the stars he had once thought to rule. And in the escape pods, hurtling towards an uncertain future, the humans wept and laughed and planned, the weight of destiny heavy on their shoulders. They had struck a blow for freedom, but the war was far from over. There would be new allies to find, new enemies to face. The galaxy would tremble at their coming. For the children of Earth were rising, and the stars were theirs for the taking. If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.